Welcome to Pause for the Truth, where you can sit back, relax, and hear an honest dialogue about health, wealth, legal, and social issues. The hosts are Dr. Rogers Kane, family practice physician, and Jocelyn Turner, health education consultant, with co hosts from the Northeast Florida Medical Society and its foundation. Stay tuned for the truth about matters affecting you and your family. We're here to tell you what's really going on and why. Good evening and welcome to Pause for the Truth. I am your co host, Jocelyn Turner. Thank you for joining us this evening. It's a very important topic tonight, and I guess you say that every week, Jocelyn. Of course, I think all of our topics are very important, but it's Men's Health Month. One of the things that I am passionate about as I think about and remember my father, I call him the original Ben Turner because there are two others after him, but just really started focusing on that as a result of my father's own health. So it's not just about me today. Of course, I can't do this alone. And Dr. Kane, how are you doing this evening before we introduce our guests?
I'm doing absolutely marvelous since it is about me and the guys that look like me.
I know, right? Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Kane. And tonight you're actually going to be wearing two hats because we're going to tap into your knowledge and wisdom, of course, as a primary care physician here in Northeast Florida. So thank you for offering that additional expertise this evening. And from behind the scenes, our very own, he's calling himself the technology wizard, Tyrone Jackson. How are you doing this evening, Tyrone?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Since the show today was about men's health, I think I barely qualified, so I thought I'd step up a little bit.
We appreciate that. And of course, we have to give Tyrone a shout out because, Dr. Kane and I come on each week and talk, but we certainly can't do this without the wizard behind the scenes, making sure that all the bugs and everything are pushed out the way and that we have a good show each week as we broadcast live on YouTube and Facebook and all those other platforms that Tyrone has set up for us. So thank you for all that you do. Joining us this evening is my friend of many decades. I guess I shouldn't say that because I'm aging both of us. Is
I'm like
Roger
Jack Benny. I'm stuck on 39.
Is my friend who I tapped on the shoulders several years ago and said, Roger, don't you want to get involved in this in men's health? And he said yes, and he's been in it from the duration, from the inception until now, and just won't let it go because, quite frankly, he recognizes the importance of it. How are you doing this evening, Roger?
Well, good evening to you and Dr. Kane and to Mr. Tyrone behind the scenes and to all of those who are listening in or viewing the podcast on your various platforms. It is good to be back with you. I was telling Dr. Kane that I have visited with you before, probably on one other podcast, and it's always good to see both of you and to discuss men's health issues, which we've been doing for almost 14 years now, I would guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's right. It's been a long time. And 13 and a half years ago, my dad passed. So you're right. It was right before that as his health issues were changing. I kind of brought some folks together. I was working at the health department at the time, and they knew obviously the importance of focusing on men's health. And it is something that we've been doing. Me, Dr. Kane, and Roger have been doing with the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition. So we're going to hear a little bit more about that. But if you're just tuning in, we're talking about men's health, understanding health across different age groups. And as I said at the beginning, Dr. Kane is going to allow us to tap into his expertise as a primary care physician, because obviously being in business or practice for several decades, he's seen a lot, experienced a lot. And so
aging.
I say that, Dr. Kane, to make sure that they understand and appreciate your expertise. So, Dr. Kane, I think you you prepared some slides that you'd like to share with our audience tonight. Are you ready to show those?
Yes, I am. It's going to be very relatively brief, but I wanted to bring to attention that the various concerns as it relates to especially African American men, the things that we need to look at and focus on. As you can see, what we're trying to do is understand that the health concerns of African American males across different age groups. Okay, especially as it relates to 20 to 39. 40 to 59, and then 60 or above. And why are we focusing on these men's health? Back up, Tyrone, too fast. Why are we focusing on this? Well, African American men tend to experience a higher rate of heart disease, stroke, diabetes, prostate cancer, and much of this occurs as a result of the health disparities that particularly face African American males. And these disparities come across from various socioeconomic factors, police harassment, yada, yada. Various socioeconomic factors, access to healthcare, and then cultural lifestyle. And unfortunately, African American men face a higher burden of these health issues. And so understanding these health issues is great. What I want to do is look at the top 10 leading causes of death in African American males. Believe it or not, it's not prostate cancer, because people tend to, whenever we start talking about men's health, people tend to focus in and laser beam in on prostate cancer. That's what makes African American men health different than African American women, or women in general, is about the prostate cancer. But we share some of the same issues that women have in terms of what affects them. So the top 10 leading causes of death in African American males include heart disease, number 1, cancer, 2, unintentional injuries, automobile accidents or whatever accident we may encompass. Number 3, we do still kill each other. I regret to say that, especially at a younger age. So homicide, stroke, diabetes, chronic lower respiratory infections. Basically, we're talking about pneumonias. We're talking about kidney disease and the role that it plays. And we're talking about a systemic infection, which is called sepsis. In those circumstances, it's called sepsis. And then high blood pressure. Next. All right. So I decided what I wanted to do was focus in on these, the particular age groups that we're looking at. So when we look at 20 to 39-year-old, what we look at is what's that, top 10 causes of death in those guys. And that order of that is more or less, when you're 20 to 39, you're more likely to die from unintentional injuries, i.e. accidents. Second most cause is homicide. You can see the percentage on the screen. Cancer, still prevalent, even at such a young age. Heart disease, even at such a young age, that's a 10% prevalent. And we go on down to lower numbers, which include stroke, but I've seen it happen in young folks. And then we go back to the chronic respiratory disease, the diabetes, the kidney disease, sepsis, and high blood pressure. Next. So in the African American age group of 20 to 39, 20% of African Americans at this age are faced with hypertension. Okay, now as we looked at in previous programs, we all know what the effects of hypertension can do. And because the guests that we've had on those occasions were really, really great at taking a look at hypertension. That included the cardiologist we have, Dr. Trevor Green, and of course his wife, Dr. Deborah Price. And we discussed hypertension to a great degree. We can never talk about it enough, because it says 20%, as we can see, 20% of African American males between the ages of 20 and 39 have high blood pressure. In my practice, it tend to be more, but that's because I am in a community where, my practice service African American males especially, but we're also in a community that has food deserts and all other kind of issues that contribute toward hypertension. I think 20, 30 years ago, I brought up the term cholesterol row up on Dunn Avenue, but I should have also included cholesterol/hypertension role, because that's what they provide: high fatty foods, high salty foods. So the recommendation for these young men of that age is regular exercise, a balanced diet, and believe it or not, and we talk about checkup. We can say anything about routine that I like to include in that is mental health checkups, because we do tend to have quite a bit of mental health issues going on in these young males. But of course, that's not them. If you ask them that question, it's like, not me. I'm fine from a mental health standpoint. So next slide, Tyrone. So as far as the 40 to 59-year-old age group, the leading cause of death is heart disease. Second, cancer, but that includes prostate cancer. We have lung cancer that we should be looking at, which is probably one of the more prevalent ones. Lung cancer. You have other different cancers to look at, but prostate cancer is still a significant issue that raises that cancer level in terms of death from cancer. Unintentional injuries tend to go down some. That's automobile accidents and others. Stroke, got a presence of about 10%. Diabetes, again, we get the respiratory infection, the kidney disease, homicide, high blood pressure tend to be of a little bit lower status in this. Next. Now, and then so what's a particular interest is that 40 to 59-year-old age group, where hypertension and diabetes play a significant role in the cause of death. And I can tell you that, tell all of you on the line, not that y'all don't know already, but over in my neck of the woods, I'm working in Health Zone 1, which is Jacksonville North Side. It's the hood that kind of atmosphere I grew up in, even though it doesn't mean that only the people in the hood suffer from this, because it's across the board. It's very difficult to differentiate why is well-educated, I'm not going to say wealthy, but well-off men tend to have issues that affect the same men of different socioeconomic status. Why is this so prevalent across the board? And we can come into that discussion a little later. But as you can see, hypertension represents 40% of the issues that African Americans face, diabetes being 25% of it. And in my community, like I was saying, look like 2/3 of my patients have a combination of high blood pressure, diabetes, and elevated cholesterol. Okay. Now, what that does is tell us we need to get regular screening for high blood pressure, cholesterol, blood sugar for the diabetes, obviously. We're also in that age group where, especially at the age of 45, we start looking at colorectal cancer and prostate health. I tend to do a lot more aggressive screening for prostate cancer in African American males starting at the age of 40. For many years, that was not priority of our government, but now I think they're falling in line with Dr. Kane in terms of going and screening screening Black men for these issues. And we should also make sure that our patients, or if you're the wife or the mother, make sure they're aware of the risk that these African American hold for heart disease, risk factors that they have. Next. Now we're looking at the 60-plus-year-old. Heart disease is a significant issue. 25% they contribute to 25% of the ill health of African Americans. However, they contribute a lot more in terms of the death of African Americans from, as to the cause of death. So even though this says 25%, which is less than the 30% of cancer, it doesn't take into account we look at cardiovascular disease. Cardiovascular disease include heart disease and stroke, and as being the leading cause. And if you add those two together, you're definitely looking at 55% of African American males tend to die over the age of 60, tend to die from cardiovascular disease. Cancer number 2, and that also again goes back to include prostate cancer, but colorectal cancer is a possibility. Also, the men that we've had a history of smoking, you got to go look at lung cancer, and then some of the other lesser cancers, not lesser in terms of severity, but in terms of occurrence, also play a role in it. Diabetes being at 10% as far as the cause of death is concerned. But again, that contributes to the cardiovascular disease status. Risk factor for sudden death from diabetes versus a heart attack, they pretty much similar. Diabetes, as a matter of fact, is considered a risk equivalent to an individual who have had a heart attack in the past. They have the same risk of having a heart attack going forward. In other words, if Tyrone had a twin brother that looked exactly like him, everything just like him, poor guy, just like him, they would have the same risk of death or sudden death because the risk for having death from diabetes versus those from having a heart attack are pretty much equivalent and pretty much the same. Then we look at kidney disease, and of course we get the respiratory disease and so on and so on. Next. So in that age group, our recommendations for that would be seeing as how heart disease is leading cause of death in African American males. But remember, I talked about cardiovascular disease, obviously. The recommendations are regular checkups. You notice that with all the guys. Everybody, regular checkup. Everybody. Know your numbers. Know what's going on. Know your PSA. Know your cholesterol. Know your blood sugar. Yada, yada, yada. A healthy diet. Staying active. Even when you're old, you still need to get up and get around. So stay active. Get regular screenings. Go to your physician, your primary care physician. You want to see what your prostate looks like. Your colon cancer screening looks like. For those who smoke, you want to go back and take a look at the workup of respiratory issues, especially when it comes down to those who smoke for over 30 years. Some people are looking at 20 years. For those who smoked over 20 to 30 years, having an annual low-dose CT scan can actually, after the age of 55, can actually come back and help us keep an eye on the development of lung cancer and help us catch it early. And so again, we go back to the cancer screening. Manage your existing health condition. If you know you got high blood pressure, manage it with. So it doesn't become a cardiac issue. So it doesn't become cardiovascular disease. So it doesn't become a stroke, which we discussed the last two programs. We talked about stroke. If people that hadn't looked at it, they need to go back and look at that particular podcast because it was excellent, as well as the one for high blood pressure. Bone health is a concern. Men do die from osteoporosis, if they live long enough. It becomes an issue more about women because they live longer than we do. And then we just don't pay attention to it. But men will develop osteoporosis if they live long enough. Problem is, hadn't been living so long for that to be an obvious issue. Discuss concerns about your sexual health. I have no greater need for having an appreciation of stuff like Viagra and Cialis and stuff than when it comes down to men and their concerns about having erectile dysfunction, especially when it comes down to managing their blood pressure. Because they tend to not want to take the blood pressure medicine because they're going to say, Doc, is that going to mess with my nature? Yeah, it might, but it's a temporary issue that we can fix. You have a stroke. I can't fix it. It's done. Stick a fork in it. It is done. So discuss, we want to make sure men discuss their sexual, concerns about their sexual health with their doctor. And he can give you more information than the guy from Pfizer who's on a commercial talking about erectile dysfunction. Because one of the things we do have to keep in mind is that those drugs are not completely without any issues. You have to pay attention to those drugs for people who have heart issues, especially because they can make matters worse. So always talk with your doctor before you run out to the gas station and buy some of that over-the-counter Viagra that might be 10 times more potent than what your doctor writes the prescription for, causing greater health concerns. Finally, mental health, as I mentioned before, for all ages. That's it pretty much, Tyrone. We've gotten to that point. I'm going to put these slides together and put them on our website along with some other prompts and props so that people can come in and take a look at it and see what our issues are. Bless you.
Thank you.
That's it for me.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. That was very informative. And I wanted to just really point out that when you look at the leading causes of death and you look at those things, number 1 and 2 pretty much is the same on most of them, and that is heart disease and cancer. And nationally, those interchange with not just African Americans, but within the nation in general. But what do they have in common? In some instances, it's about your lifestyle choices and habits. I'm glad you talked about the importance of regular checkups and knowing your numbers in terms of your cholesterol, your blood sugar, your blood pressure. And then, of course, when it comes to cancer, then knowing your PSA level. A lot of conversations we've had in the past also included what we consume on a daily basis in terms of our diet. And my favorite line, 2 things that our favorite registered dietitian told us when it comes to eating healthy is that foods that we should eat, a lot of us talk about, reading labels. And she said, and I'm referencing Linda Brown, what she said so eloquently is the foods that we should eat, you don't have to read labels. They don't come with labels. And that's, of course, fruits and vegetables. Now, what makes them bad is the way we prepare them in terms of eating the smoked meat and all the other products to them. So just keep that in mind. The other thing she talked about when we had Dr. Rawls on, the gastroenterologist, is the importance of walking, having regular bowel movements. And she said an easy way to remedy that is to have 2 whole carrots, and drink a bottle of water, right? And then go for a 30-minute walk. For those people who may have irregularity issues, that will remedy that. So those are just 2 easy, in my opinion, 2 easy remedies. But I want to bring Roger Williams into the discussion because, Roger, you and I recognized years ago that it's so important to continue this conversation. Dr. Kane has talked to us at length over the years and really been our medical supporter and guided us through the conversations, the numerous conversations that we've had with men over the years. So several years ago, more than a dozen years ago, we started the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition.
Yeah.
And so, Roger, you have, I love it how you've stuck around. The first thing you did is you made the organization a 501c3 organization.
Right.
And so now we're able to really expand and grow and do some things. Tell our audience a little bit about some of the things that we've done years as it relates to the Men's Health Coalition.
Well, one of the things that struck me in our discussion of starting the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition and making a nonprofit 501c3 organization so that we could garner funds to do the thing that Dr. Kane so wonderfully did a few minutes ago with his slides. The scriptures talk about that we perish for a lack of knowledge. And when you talk about the lack of health knowledge, you have men who are dying from diseases that can be treatable. They can be modified through diet and exercise. They can be prevented. I think prevented is a better word than modified. And so one of the things that we wanted to do was to educate men, and by having the nonprofit, by doing the Men's Health Coalition, as well as doing the mental health summits. Remember the Man Up mental health summits that we've done with partnerships with Baptist Health, partnerships with Florida State College, and partnerships as well with the state attorney's office, because we not only wanted to educate adult men, we wanted to start the younger men, the younger generation, to understand the importance, as Dr. Kane just stated, about knowing your numbers, knowing your blood pressure numbers, knowing your PSA, knowing your blood sugar numbers. By having the information and having regular checkups and doing the preventive issues like drinking appropriate number of glasses of water during the day, eating fruits and vegetables, exercising. Because one of the things that we used to say in the Man Up for Health, as a man, if I have a daughter, I want to walk my daughter down the aisle. I don't want to die in my 30s and 40s, never having the opportunity to walk with her, never having the opportunity to see my kids graduate from high school or college and to start families of their own. And so we've utilized a number of these opportunities in person. And then when the pandemic struck, we improvised. We went on Zoom and we did virtual summits using these same tools to educate these young men about the importance of health, the importance of diet, the importance of exercise, the importance of regular checkups. And we even invited the women because we want husbands and wives to have many anniversaries. And we tell them, you women go and get their regular checkups and they have no issues. In fact, I've heard some women joke, you think it's bad that you have to take the finger. How about me getting up on some stirrups? Let's swap places. If you think my situation is worse than yours and you're complaining about a 2-minute or 2-second, however long the digital exam may be, but that does not compare to what we have to go through. And so we've tried to use humor, we've tried to use education, we've tried to use, and we've used some really good information from great resources that is based on science, is based on fact. We're living in a world now where people are just lying to you left and right about everything. But when you come to our sessions, our Man Up for Health, we provided really factual, good scientific, good nutritionists that weren't coming there just to fool you. And then we did gifts and prizes and exercise. Some really we provided incentives. If the incentive for you to not want to pass away in your 30s and 40s, your people used to say, well, 50 is the new 40 or 60 is the new 40. We can really make that happen in this day and age. And it's a real shame for us to see people. I had a friend the other day that passed in his 40s, and part of his issue was he was diabetic, Doc, and he tragically passed away. So we want to put an end to that. And we want to continue doing what we've been doing. I know coming out of the pandemic, it has been difficult, but we still have opportunities to provide training. And we've been working with Jocelyn and telling Jocelyn, she's going to be our executive director when we expand, because we want to expand the board for the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition. We want to continue seeking grants and seeking other opportunities so that we can continue to educate our men and prevent us being the statistic. Why should African-American males lead in the negative categories when we have the information, we have the knowledge, we have the wherewithal, we have opportunities now with expanded access to healthcare that, with Obamacare that the other side fought to not allow us to have, to health clinics. There are a number of health clinics that came out and participated with us. It really is a crime for us to not to not work and educate and help prevent these deaths, so that, as that song says, I want to dance with my father again. I want to see my dad, get on the arm of my dad, who walk me down the aisle.
Let me say this. One of the things I tell patients real quick, and I talk to men, is that I tell them of an experience that I have, and I'm not going to go through that full length of the experience. But one of the things I do say to them at the end of that description about the experience I had is that I feel I owe my youngest child, whichever age it may be, I feel that I owe them to get them to the age of 25 to have given them everything that I can offer them in terms of my knowledge, at least up to that point, my knowledge, my experience, how to survive life, and making sure that they are well equipped to move forward in the future without their dad being present. Obviously, that's not what I want to happen, but you owe your youngest child, which means that'll take care of everybody else. Oh, your youngest child, to get them at least to 25 where they can get mature enough to look as if, to appear to be taking care of themselves. You've done that, and it's great. Obviously, it's also great to be around when your grandkids get here to pass on what knowledge grandparents do, not to be a babysitter necessarily, but at least be around to provide the knowledge for those kids, your kid, to get them to adulthood and feel more comfortable about them being able to move on without you being present in their life. Obviously, I want to be, to forever and a day, but at least to the age 25. So.
Yeah, and joining us, thank you, Roger. And one thing that Roger didn't tell you about, and we'll talk about it after we pause for a moment. But first, I want to bring in our other guest, who was, I love how we grind to the end, right? And so he was most kind to finish up work and join us on the podcast. And he is Merlin Tony Baker. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing fine. And yourself?
Oh, just peachy for a Tuesday. We're so happy that you're able to join us, because you're talking about a topic that many guys don't like talking about. So
is that right? Really?
Yeah. I'll tell you something, huh? So we're gonna take a pause for just a moment. Each week we feature our history maker moment, and Tyrone is going to share a moment as we continue to talk about those things in our history. Don't go anywhere, guests. We're just going to pause for a moment, and then we'll finish our discussion on men's health.
Welcome to the Pause for the Truth podcast History Minute. Today is June 18th, 2024. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to forget the importance of pausing and reflecting on our past. Our history is not just a series of events that happened long ago. It's a rich tapestry of experiences, lessons, and stories that have shaped who we are today and who we will become tomorrow. Today's show is particularly special as we will be discussing the upcoming holiday, Juneteenth. Hey there, history buffs! Today, I'm diving deep into one of the most pivotal moments in American history, Juneteenth. This isn't just a date on the calendar, it's a celebration of freedom and a reflection on the journey to equality that continues even today. Let me set the scene. It's June 19th, 1865. Picture this. Major General Gordon Granger lands in Galveston, Texas, bringing a message that would forever change the landscape of America. He announced, "The people of Texas are informed that, in accordance with a proclamation from the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free." This single statement signaled the end of slavery in the United States and birthed the holiday we now know as Juneteenth. But what did freedom really mean back then? For the newly freed slaves, this was both a joyous release and a daunting challenge. Absolute equality in personal rights and property rights was promised, yet the reality was far more complex. The transition from slaves to hired labor was fraught with struggle, resilience, and the relentless pursuit of true freedom. Let's fast forward to today. why does Juneteenth still resonate so deeply in our society? It's more than a historical date. It represents the ongoing journey towards equality and justice, a journey that, frankly, we're still on. And then there's the historical Ashton Villa in Galveston, Texas, built in 1859, and one of the few buildings that withstood the devastating 1900 storm. Saved from demolition in 1970, this magnificent structure now hosts the island's annual Juneteenth celebration. Can you imagine the layers of history encapsulated within those walls? The voices, the stories, the silent echoes of the past? Every year as Juneteenth is celebrated, it's not just about remembering the past. It's about understanding how that past shapes our present and will continue to influence our future. It's about honoring those who fought for their freedom and recognizing that their fight is part of a larger ongoing struggle for civil rights. So, as we reflect on Juneteenth, let's remember, it's not just a celebration. It's a call to action, to educate, to understand, and to continue the fight for equality. Because understanding our past is the first step towards shaping a better future. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Let's keep learning and keep fighting for what's right. Until next time. End of script.
That's why they call us Pause for the Truth.
Thank you, Tyrone, for showing us the Juneteenth, the importance of it, because I know it's not Men's Health, but tomorrow we are celebrating Juneteenth across America because it is a national holiday. So thankfully, some of us get the day off and really appreciate the holiday. As I mentioned before we pause for the History Maker moment, we're going to talk a little bit about, or talk with, may I call you Tony?
Sure.
With Tony, because what he does is so important. When Roger was speaking about Men's Health and the Man Up for Health Summit that we did, when we initially started, it was Man Up for Health. And then after the first year, the men who came said, gosh, I wish we could have brought our sons, our nephews. And so we called it Man Up for Health, a summit for men and boys. And what we focused on, Tony, for men was primarily the physical health, all the diseases and things prior to you coming on that Dr. Kane talked about. However, for the boys, we focused a lot on behavioral health because quite simply, the data showed us that we should. Nowadays, we have other elements that may be contributing to it or may be a result of the behavior or mental health issues, and that is substance use or substance abuse, and so many, so on and so forth. So tell us a little bit from your experience, what's happening with men when it comes to mental wellness and really just trying to maintain some balance in their lives?
Well, I tell you, Jocelyn, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. And Dr. Rogers, Big Daddy Kane, thank you for having me on the show as well. I forgot that name. See, I remember. My man, listen, first of all, thank you guys for having me on the show. You guys are doing the excellent thing for the community. And I'm glad that someone is being consistent and being, I guess, fervent in their message. So thank you for that. I think a lot is happening. I think one of the things that we look at is social media platform, which I think is a great thing because it gets information out. It gives people a voice. It also gives people an opportunity to be expressive. And there are a whole lot of social media targets out there. I think, unfortunately, some of those targets are not explored, which causes that information to kind of go awry, so to speak. I kind of developed an acronym to kind of capsulize the mental health situation with men and boys in particular, and I guess women too, but in general, we're talking about men and boys. And I have it in an acronym of ESPN because a lot of men watch sports, and so the acronym is from ESPN. So the E, I like to say, is entertainment. And what I mean by entertainment is one of the things that I see in a lot of men's life when I talk to them in session is that they don't have any hobbies. They have no hobbies. And so a lot of times what happens when you talk about mental and psychological health is when you don't have hobbies to help promote that. A lot of times life seems routine, boring, and mundane. So I would encourage men to is gain some type of entertainment, some type of hobby. It is okay to try something new. It's not a failure when you try something new and don't do it well. It just means that you're trying something new. But I would encourage men to get entertainment. The S is for social, or socialization. You know, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, the CNN medical director, wrote a book. And one of the things that he talks about in his book, 12 things that people need to do to prolong their life and their brain functioning. One of the things that he talks about, what causes brain functioning to dwindle down, is the lack of socialization. You know, the Bible says it is not good that man should be alone. Now, I like to be transparent with you. I enjoy my time to myself, but I'm more of a voyeuristic person. So for me, being able to go to a mall or sit at a coffee shop and watch people walk in and out, to me, that's my level of socialization. But S is that men have to socialize. It's interesting to know that most men die alone. And what I mean by alone is they die with no viable connections. And so that's one of the things that we have to be intentional in as men, is to develop socialization. The P in ESPN is for physical and psychological. And what we don't stand, and Dr. Kane, I know you know this, and I was listening to Dr. Williams, I know he knows this, is that the physical impacts the psychological, and the psychological impacts the physical. And because a lot of men don't get their consistent physicals done, a lot of times they could be dealing with diabetes, but it feels like a mental health situation. A lot of people, particularly African Americans, are vitamin D deficient. That can feel like a mental health situation in terms of feeling sluggish and feeling tired all the time. Also dealing with high blood pressure undiagnosed. You can have headaches and just don't feel like yourself and feel abnormal. Even you can have spinning and you can feel like, you know what, maybe I have schizophrenia or something like that, because things just seem to be causing me to feel dizzy. So definitely physical and psychological is the P. The N, I think, is probably most important. The N in ESPN is for needs versus wants. Needs versus wants. One of the most challenging things that I see people struggle with, especially men, is determining their needs versus their wants. And I think it's very important that men begin to analyze that, to develop lists and to find out, what do I need in my life when I'm 20 years old? Because what I needed in my life as a 25-year-old is different from what I need in my life as a 54-year-old. And I think that's very important for men to do. Is so, again, the E is for entertainment, to get hobbies. The S is for socialization. The P is for physical and psychological. And the N is for getting your needs versus your wants. And let me say this too, especially with married men. It's very important to get that information out there to your spouse and vice versa. Because when you're in a marriage and a relationship, your spouse has to know what you need. Now, what you want may not line up to what you need, because you change as people grow and as people develop. So if I can give something out to men and boys, or boys to become men, that would be my ESPN strategy.
The only thing I
that sounds like a good
ESPN-C, which is communication. ESPN-C, communication. We don't communicate with our spouses and our family. You know how men are. We tend to just kind of keep things in. But that's the only thing I would add to that acronym, if that be the case.
I love that. And what I really like about it is so true that men are just doing life. Not just men, but people just do life. However, you work every day to provide for the family. But what do you do for your downtime? You may come home and watch television, but what's your hobby? I know Dr. Kane always talking about his little gadgets and, getting in his little stuff and thing. But what hobby do you have? And I know some guys in my life who they don't do anything but work, right? Occasionally, and I'm not calling any names because I don't want to call them out like that, but I can't think of some of them who actually have a hobby. They have an occasional
Right.
Well,
socialization.
it's not me, Jocelyn. I got my golf clubs.
Right. But you know what? You know what, Jocelyn? To what you just said, and I want to say this lovingly, but I want to say this affirmatively. Vaping, smoking, even your medical marijuana is not a hobby.
No, no.
Because a lot of people say, hey, I go and I got my medical marijuana card and I smoke out and then I do that. That's not a healthy hobby. Well, let me put it this way, because I can't say that because do you have medical? I'll say that shouldn't be the only hobby that you have.
Yeah. And I see Roger, Roger and I was looking at your post, Roger, where you just you take walks, right? And that's just your time where you'll get out and walk. And Roger's post was simply something, it was cute. He was like, look who I saw today or something. Was that a turtle or something? So
Yeah, it was. I was walking out by the JU. They have the Blue Cypress Park, and as I'm walking, I've never seen a tortoise that large and moving that fast. And I just, it's good to get out and see. We have some wonderful wildlife here in Florida. We see the birds as they transition from up north. We have the woodpeckers banging on the trees. We have tortoises. I even saw a raccoon running across the street earlier. So I was thinking about, I don't know if it's time to mention the Reel In Good Health fishing, but I thought this would be a wonderful time to get that out. Or did you want to wait, Jocelyn?
No, go ahead, Roger.
No, I said that we want to continue making plans to educate men and to give them and not have them just sitting in a room boring. So in this coming September, we're looking to do a Reel In Good Health fishing for wellness. And we want to give men an opportunity. Maybe they may discover that fishing is that hobby that they need. We're going to socialize. We're going to exercise. We're going to eat healthy snacks, and we're going to educate. We're going to do all of those things in one. And I don't remember the date or the location, Jocelyn. I was trying to pull it up, but all I pulled up was the outline. But maybe if you can share, as our executive director, you can tell us the date, location, and time. See how I keep putting that in there?
It's your job.
Sure.
Roger, I got a question, Roger. I got a very important question. I got to ask this very important question. This is deep. Buckle up and hold on to your seat.
Okay.
Did you beat the turtle? Did you beat the turtle run? That's what I wanted. That's what I want. You left that part out. You said it was moving fast and this and that. You did not say if you won. Did you win?
Did you catch up with that
I
turtle?
beat him walking backwards, my brother. I beat him walking
backwards. All right.
Yeah, but what Roger was talking about, the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition, as during the pandemic, we transitioned to a virtual platform, but now we are meeting in person the first time in about, since before the pandemic. And we're having Reel In Good Health Fishing for Wellness. It's going to be September 28th at Life Through the Word Ministry, Lakeside. And Lakeside, the key to that is that beautiful church is on a lake. And so we're going to educate you and give you the opportunity to go fishing during the event. So put a pause on the date, September 28th, and we'll share more about that in the future. And you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. If you happen to be a sponsor who'd like to sponsor us, you can reach out to me, Jocelyn at TurnerAlliance.com, or you can reach the coalition, Healthy JAX Men at gmail.com. Either way, and I'll make sure that Tyrone posts my contact information on our website. But, really, it is so important. And many have asked me, what is a woman doing being involved with men's health? I can tell you, and many ladies can tell you, if it were not for them, their men would not show up at the doctor. A lot of ladies are the ones who encourage their men. But Tony, The other part of it is mothers are really key in terms of making sure their boys, they're paying attention to what's going on with their boys, right? Mothers do so well with taking their boys to the doctor when they're younger to get those very important vaccines. However, if those young men are not engaged in a sport, then they tend to fall off taking them in for their physical exam. But taking them to the doctor, Dr. Kane, on a regular basis, the pediatrician or primary care physician can then maybe figure out if there are some behavioral health issues going on with those young men early on. Because one thing I learned during Mental Health Awareness Month last month is that a lot of mental health issues start to surface at the age of 20, right? I think that was the age that was 18
well,
or
actually, to be honest with you, and certainly I think you're right with a lot of the major ones, but like actually from 0 to 10, from 0 to 10 is when attention deficit hyperactivity disorder starts, opposition defiant disorder starts, and also this is oftentimes the age when autism is diagnosed as well, from the age of 0 to 10. When you go from 11 to 20, I got kind of like a 10-year thing. When you go from 11 to 20, when you get in your teenage years, is when the anxiety disorders and the depressions start to be realized as a teenager. But you're right, in terms of the prodromal phase of schizophrenia, that does occur in the early 20s and late teens.
And again, that's so important why it's important that no matter your age, everybody needs to have a medical home, that they're going to a doctor on a regular basis, and really so that the primary care physician and the pediatrician can really hone in on to those things that may be manifesting in those children that the parent may not notice. Dr. Kane, you were going to say something?
Yeah.
What I don't want to forget, don't want people to forget, is that those teenage years is when boys begin to develop the attributes that they need to become men. And they also, that's the years that they make these changes that, I have a nephew one time, I called to talk to his mom, and all of a sudden he's like, hello. Who the hell last time I talked to him, like 2 weeks earlier, he said, boy, and all of a sudden I heard that hello, which highlights that in those teenage years, that's when you see these sexual development, sexual behaviors. So it becomes very important to talk to those young men and women at that time. But especially young men, since we're talking about men right now. And I want to make sure that we don't let that slide, especially primary care physicians. I know pediatricians pay a lot of attention to that, but especially primary care physicians, sexual health education is key to these young men surviving to get as old as I am.
One of the things that I wanted to say, I really like the ESPN, but I think one of the things that I see that is very misleading, and you did not do it. You gave two separate, the E as in entertainment, but then you gave the P as being physical. So often for men, we want to join the two. And all the time, they don't have to be joined. Roger said that he golfs. But what about the guy who his hobby is painting or building models and things of that nature? I thought it was important to come from behind the scenes and say that it's not always necessary that entertainment and physical be joined. It's important that each be realized, but then it's not necessary that they be conjoined together.
I was going to say something real quick too. I know you guys were talking about having a primary care physician, but I think in this day and age, people need to identify therapists too. Just like you have an identified pediatrician and a primary care physician, I think we're in the age as to where if you don't have a therapist that you've chosen, you need to at least have a therapist identified so that you can make sure that you can get not only your physiological health done, but your psychological health taken care of as well. Because what happens to a lot of people is that when there's an emergency, a mental health situation emergency, they spend more time trying to find a therapist than going to a therapist. So I would encourage people that as we move forward to not only identify with they have your pediatrician and your primary care physician figured out, but also you need to identify a therapist as well.
And I do that with when it comes down to diabetes. Some of my patients go, Dr. King, you taking care of my diabetes? Why do I need particularly those persons who have uncontrolled diabetes? But that's another story. One of the things they're saying is that why am I going to see a diabetic doctor, endocrinologist? I said, because there may come a day in which my level of expertise with your diabetes is not what you need. You need a greater level. So I'd rather put you in touch with one now, so that should the need come up, we got him already on speed dial, for lack of a better description. So I think what you're saying is very important. At least have that mental health therapist where you done introduced them. If we can get past the men being, I'm not crazy. I don't need to see a mental health person. If we can get past that, to have them on speed dial, so to speak.
Yeah, and I always say, and I tell people, I'm sorry, I mention this real quick, and then I want to bring you back in because Jacksonville has a large military community. And so Dr. Jones made the comment about PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. So, and it's not just in those who served in the military, but obviously that's a special group of folks. But make sure that you're tapping into the benefits that you have, because your benefits will pay for you to go see a therapist, right? You don't have to struggle. We'll go to the barbershop and you'll go to the barbershop, get your haircut done. You'll take care of that car, your baby. That's what you call that's your baby, your car. You'll go to a mechanic on a regular basis, go to the car wash and take care of them. Treat yourself the same way. And I tell people, I have friends. My friends include a physician, Dr. Kane, for one, a mechanic, a plumber, handyman. You need a variety of people to help you when you're in need. So, Tony, I like that thought about making sure as your medical team includes a therapist.
Yeah, first of all, Jocelyn, just to correct you, Roger and I don't need to go to a barbershop. We good now. So I want Dr. Kane still got some hair up there. Roger and I, we good. So we don't go shave. But no, what I was going to what I was going to say was, one objection to that thought about men being macho is this: you can recover from a broke leg, but you can't recover from a broken mind.
Right. Exactly.
When your mind is broken, that impacts everything, right? When your leg is broken, you can still function. If your finger's broken, you can still function. When your mind is broken, you can't think clearly. And if you can't think clearly, then that impacts everything in your life.
But let me add to that, and that is, they come to see me and I might be able to fix your broken leg, your broken finger, but you need a greater expert for that broken mind than yours truly.
Yeah.
And I think that, in today, especially in today's time, social media has such an impact on the thoughts and the minds of our youth, and even the adults, because some of them look at that, listen to some of that garbage that's out there, but has such an impact that some of the stuff that you hear there needs to be dispelled. And rather than me wearing like 13 different hats, a nurse, a dietitian, a physician, and so on and so on, social worker, I like to go ahead and use those guys who are expert in it, put that hat on them and say, it's your ball. You need to go ahead and dribble and take care of this for me.
Yeah. And this is a very complex conversation, in my opinion. And, I look at Roger, because his other hat of many hats that he wears is he's a pastor. And from my day job, one of the things that we offer is a trauma-informed congregation training for the faith community. letting them know that, when people come to church every day, they, or every Sunday, however they often they go to hear Reverend Williams, and other faith leaders, you know, sometimes the faith leaders don't recognize some challenges that people are having. And so we offer this trauma informed congregation training to let faith leaders know that, while we know that it's important to spiritually feed people, some people need that extra attention. And so refer them to us. The program that I work with is called Recast. And so really, and that is building resilience in families after stress and trauma. Refer to Tony for therapy, because it's important to know that people need the attention. And by the way, when you all were talking, I was thinking about, Jacksonville has a large population of homeless people. And, when Tony was talking about the age of people when schizophrenia, for example, or some other disorders start to appear, I look at the young men I see on the side of the road, or young ladies, and who look, you can tell that they have that look as though they are experiencing some mental health issues, and they're young. And I think about, those are the individuals that we're talking about. We've got to start paying attention to the behaviors. But Tony, what the challenge that some families have is that, and Dr. Kane, you can tell me that, is that the systems that are in place, when families are recognizing the challenges that are happening, or Roger, with your attorney hat on now, when families recognize that their loved ones are experiencing some mental health issues and want to have them Baker acted, for example, or want to just get them to see a therapist, then those laws come into place, and families are unable to get those individuals just to be assessed to see if something's going on with them. Something dramatic or drastic has to happen in order for those individuals to get the care that they need. Anybody want to comment on that?
Go ahead, Roger. If you got something, I'll add
No,
to it.
I was going to say that I handle, or in my day job, when I'm not preaching on Sunday mornings, I um, work with the Department of Children and Families, and sometimes we work with the forensics cases where, you see young men who have committed crimes, and the difficulty for families is, as you say, the resources are there, and the Baker Act is there as a protection, so that we're not going to lock people up just because someone says that they might be having a short episode. But we have to be mindful is that these diseases of the mind and I just use that as a general term, they're very difficult for families to address. And a number of the individuals themselves, they don't want to take medications because they say, well, they may make me feel drowsy, or
Right.
there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with me. There's something wrong with the rest of you. And fixing a broken arm or a broken foot is a whole lot easier than dealing for family members. And one of the things I want to say on here as an advocate for a person who has mental illness is that we want them to behave, and sometimes we end up putting them out where they're not having access to the medicine. I know sometimes I participate with NAMI, and they say, make sure that you take care of the home and be safe in those kind. But we also have to show some compassion and love and care, because it is not easy. It is definitely not easy. But our community should not be afraid, because we have resources like Mr. Baker, Mental Health Resource Center, Northwest Behavioral Health, that are here to help us. The thing is that we run away from the issue, just like we run away from education about health issues. We run away from the mental health issues when we should educate ourselves more about the law, about the treatment modalities that are out there, and the accessibility to mental health issues, mental health treatment. You know, it's surprisingly that they say the jail is the top mental health provider in the county. That shouldn't be.
That's something
And
wrong.
yeah, and sometimes we say we want to pray the problem away, you know, but God allowed us these medications. He allowed doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists to have the training to provide treatment. You know, I believe that prayer does change things, but that doesn't mean I don't try to pray away my you know, if I had diabetes or if I had high blood pressure or if I had whatever the issue, I don't try to pray those things away. We find ourselves going to the doctors, but we shy away from the therapists and those other persons that can provide assistance. Again, because of the stigma of mental health issues in our community.
Tyrone, make sure you bring Mr. Merlin back on. I see him back there. The one thing I will say that I've seen in the past, and that is it's a good thing that I'm looking at these days. It is good that we now, you know, a lot of people are getting to recognize the effect that mental health have on our overall well-being. And a lot of the insurance companies are finally coming around to making sure that those services can be provided. One of the best things that has happened lately is the insurance company accepting telephone-related counseling, so that a person does not have to, one, try to go way over in West Hill somewhere to seek help, you know, go to, you know, and two, having the ability to be able to talk with a mental health provider without walking into an office that says mental health provider, you know, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever it is. Because there's one thing that as Black folk, we've had aversion to going to seek help for mental health. And part of it is because of how we tend to think that we start identifying each other as something being wrong with us. So the more that person can do it in private, i.e., again, online and telephone services, the more they can do that in private, the greater chance we have of succeeding that everybody gets have access to mental health care.
Sure.
Ms. Merlin, anything to add to that one?
Yeah, you know, I think what you said is true. I think a lot of people, they prefer in person. A lot of people, and even the younger generation, when you're talking about the millennials and things of that nature, even they prefer in person. So again, it goes back to what the conversation we were talking about was being able to identify therapists. I think one key thing too, to talk about what I oftentimes hear people conversate about is overthinking. That is like a big thing now. People oftentimes talk about overthinking. They overthink. And one of the ways to manage that is by establishing a routine. If you establish a routine, that will level out the level of overthinking. And I would encourage people too. People oftentimes say, I'm a multitasker. I can multitask. Well, if you think about it, multi means more than one, which produces overthinking, right? And so the studies actually show that most people are bad multitaskers, that we can handle maybe two at the most, but when we get to doing more than that, a lot of times we become kind of fractured in our thinking and we're not as organized. So I would say, excuse me, to someone that's listening, if you struggle with overthinking, look at your routines. Look at some of the things that you do on a day-to-day basis and try to develop some type of routine so that you can be consistent in your thought process, which will help to reduce the overthinking.
Yeah, sometimes it can be over, not just over. Sometimes what it can be is more or less that your multitasking cause you to be underperformer in many of the tasks that you're trying to achieve, and you're thinking you're doing a great job, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. So
yeah.
Wow, this has been a very, very, very good conversation. It's Men's Health Month, and it is an opportunity for us. It was an opportunity for us, rather, to talk about what's happening with men. Not just Dr. Kane started with talking about physical health and those chronic health conditions that men face, and Tony came on and helped us, really learn about the mental wellness or mental health. And then Roger shared about what the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition does in terms of educating men. But we're past the end of our hour and could go on, but we want to respect everyone's time and really just ask you to share your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic as we really encourage men to be proactive with their health. Roger, I'll start with you. What are your final thoughts regarding tonight's podcast?
Thank you for the invitation and the opportunity to discuss. I view this as sort of a restart of what we started a few years ago, and hopefully the fishing event will help us to kick off and expand on the work that we've been doing these more than, like you said, more than 10 years, almost 14 years ago.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Roger. And Tony, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Well, my final thoughts is a quote that I developed years ago, and it goes like this: if you aim too low, there's nowhere to go. But if you aim higher, you will reach your desire. So I want to encourage people to continue to stretch your limits, continue to believe that you can and you will. And you don't get in life who you are, you get in life what you choose to do and what you choose to become. So don't settle for your past mistakes and past failures, because there's a greater version of you. And if you continue to aim high, the least you can fall at is the stars. And if you land on the stars, that makes you a star.
I love that. I tell you, you and your little sayings, I'm just loving it.
You in the zone today, boy.
I wasn't on last time, Dr. Kane. I got it.
Y'all have a great evening.
Dr. Kane, what are your final thoughts regarding tonight's topic?
Not sure. I enjoyed this conversation. What I will say is that I am, as far as the thing that's coming up with the fishing, for those guys that are out there, bring your sons and daughters, because it could provide some great mental health well-being to those your kids, grandkids, whomever it may be. But again, you heard me say daughters as well, because that's a lot of things that we don't do.
Daughters, Dr. Kane. Men and boys only.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. All right, so bring your sons for sure, and let them see how to do the fishing and so on and so on. The last thing is, I really thank these gentlemen for being here today. It's very informative. We really want Men's Health, the coalition, to get back in our groove that we were before the COVID kicked us out of our groove, and we were in that niche, and we were doing extremely well, as Attorney Williams stated. But it means that we got to take time out now to get back into that mode of providing these services for the population at large.
Thank you, Dr. Kane. Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Tony. My final thoughts regarding tonight, as Dr. Kane started the conversation of what happens at men's at the various stages of life, the general recommendations across all ages is that we all eat a balanced diet rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins, and healthy fats. Regular exercise, regular physical activity tailored to age and fitness levels, including strength, cardiovascular, and flexibility training. Sleep, sufficient and quality sleep to support overall health. Mental health, as you've heard, regular mental health check-ins, stress management techniques, and seeking professional help when needed. Healthcare visits, regular checkups and screenings appropriate for each age group to catch potential issues early. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. We'll make sure that we have Tony's contact information. If you are seeking mental health counseling, he is available for you. And of course, that we shared on the screen when the Healthy Jacksonville Men's Health Coalition event is happening, so that you can follow the coalition. Thank you, as always, for tuning in to Pause for the Truth. Thank you to our guests. And tune in next week as we continue the conversation on something very important and enriching for you and your families. Good evening.
And there we have it, another episode of the Pause for the Truth podcast in the proverbial books. Our heartfelt thanks go out to every one of you who took the time to tune in. Mark your calendars. We're here every Tuesday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. Feel free to join our community on Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. But the golden ticket? Subscribing to our YouTube channel. That's your passport to all our latest episodes and exclusive content. A special mention to the wizard behind the curtain, Tyrone Jackson from Call Tyrone IT Services. His technical prowess and unwavering dedication are the backbone of this podcast. Next week, we'll be back with more. Until then, tell your friends, tell your family about our show. Your support is